Welcome to the Australian Hiker Podcast, Australia's longest running hiking podcast, downloaded over 1.2 million times worldwide and providing you with an Australian perspective on all things hiking. We're your hosts, Tim and Jill Savage, coming to you from Ewan Country.
In today's episode 339 of the Australian Hiker Podcast, brought to you by Australian Hiker, we're going to talk about pack weight. We hope you enjoy. If you'd like to help support Australian Hiker and this podcast, there are a couple of ways that you can help us out. Firstly, by subscribing on your podcast host of choice so that each episode is available as soon as it's published. And if you have the opportunity, leave us a 5-star review. Another way to support us is go to the Australian Hiker website at www.australianhiker.com.au and click on the supporters page and buy us a coffee. You can do a one-off donation or become a monthly supporter. All donations are greatly appreciated and help us to continue producing this podcast and blog. Now let's get on to today's episode. The whole concept of pack weight for your hiking adventures is one of those topics that has the potential for heated debate when you get a group of hikers together. Everyone will have an opinion, but this question is like asking, how long is a piece of string? Which is just a way of saying that the answer is impossible without more specific information. In this podcast episode, we look at the concept of pack weight and discuss considerations for determining what this means for you. The first thing we're going to look at is, why do you need to consider the whole concept of weighing your pack? I mean, when you think about it, how many other sports or activities do we do that we even think about weight of the equipment to the degree we do so in hiking? The key difference is that we are carrying the gear on our backs in a pack, and this will have a physical impact on your body, and as such, we should minimize this impact as best we can. Now, in talking about how much weight you should carry, as we said, it's a bit like how long is a piece of string, but the traditional school of thought in hiking circles is your pack should aim to carry no more than 20 to 25% of your body weight. And I must admit, from my perspective, 25% is reasonably heavy.
That's a lot of weight. I wouldn't do 25%.
And even 20%, I think if you keep that as your be-all and end-all weight and try and minimise it from there. As I said, this is very much arbitrary weight, but it is a starting point. Now, this means that someone who weighs around about the 100 kilo mark, which is, I'm not there yet, I'm actually above that, my pack should be a weight of around about 20 to 25 kilos. And 25 kilos is a hard push.
Yeah, people do it. I don't know how.
And even 20 kilos from my perspective, and we'll talk about it more specifically in a moment, is probably the absolute upper limit. So that's a lot to carry. Now, if you're a small male or a smaller female and your body weight is 50 kilos, then your pack should be a maximum of around about 10 to 12.5 kilos. Now, it's possible, it's doable, but in all honesty, I think a lot of people would be hard-pressed to be carrying a pack of 10 to 12.5 kilos.
Well, 12 kilos is my absolute preferred max. And I do pretty well. I do pretty well to get it down. So that's actually less than 20 to 25% of my body weight, but that's what I prefer.
Now, we'll talk about how Jill does that in a moment. The other thing is, as I've gotten older, I found that I don't tend to heal or recover as quickly as I did when I was younger. So I look for any opportunity to minimize the impact of the weight that I carry on my body. Now, this should also be something that hikers at any age should look at doing.
Yeah, that's right.
As a large male over 100 kilos in weight, my personal preference is to carry a maximum of 18.5 kilos. And on the rare occasions I need to carry 2 days of water because water is going to be an issue, 21 kilos. But that really is about the maximum. While I'm physically capable of carrying more than that, I really do not enjoy it. It digs into the shoulders, it's not comfortable, and all I'm thinking about is how heavy the pack is rather than the pack just disappearing and me not thinking about it.
And not enjoying the trail.
No. And it's one of those sort of things that, these are arbitrary figures, but, looking at 20 to 25 kilos, that is a lot. And it's something that I wouldn't encourage anyone to do, particularly as you're getting older. Well, a lot of the older hikers that I've talked to and interviewed over the last few months, a lot of them have shifted towards ultralight gear. And we'll talk more specifically about gear in a moment. Now, there are a number of key factors that impact the weight of your pack. And the first and most obvious one is the pack itself. So when you're talking about how much you do carry in your pack, you're talking about the pack weight itself. Now, I own more than two packs.
I was going to say, what about all the others?
But there's two packs that I tend to use on a regular occasion, and these are both in the light range category. They're both around about the 55 litre capacity, and they both weigh less than a kilo. Now, these packs are classed as lightweight. You can get ultralight packs that probably weigh 600 grams, but those sort of packs don't like carrying 18 kilos. So there is a trade-off between the weight of the pack and what that pack is capable of carrying. And you find the lighter the pack, the less weight that you can carry. In Jill's case, it's carrying 12.5 kilos. She can get away with that. But in my case, carrying 18.5 kilos on a pack that weighs 600 grams wouldn't really be comfortable at all.
Yeah, and I think the other thing to be mindful of is that the lighter the weight of the pack, sometimes the comfort gets stripped out as well. Not always, but for some of the models that are available, the shoulder straps are thinner, the waist strap is not as padded, all of those sorts of things, just to get that lighter weight.
Now, in looking at people I see on trail, almost without fail, the typical pack that I will see is a 65 litre pack. Sometimes people are carrying smaller packs, sometimes bigger packs, but 65 litres tends to be the most common pack. And you can come across very lightweight packs that do weigh around about that 1 kilo mark, but you also get a lot of packs that weigh 2.5 kilos.
Yeah.
So, you're talking about 2.5 times the lightest weight pack to get that addition, to get the same capacity.
And it doesn't sound very much, the difference between one and a heavier one, 1.5 kilos. You go, oh, that's not very much. But when you're trying to, whittle away, not ridiculously, but every gram counts once you're starting to get into that sense of a comfort weight.
Yeah, and I think it's one of these sort of things, as Jill said, it's as Jill said, you're not likely to be able to say, right, I'll lose 5 kilos off my pack by getting rid of one specific item.
That's right.
It tends to be little bits from the tent, a little bit from the sleeping bag, a little bit from the pack. Those small amounts all add up to helping to reduce your pack weight. Now, we've talked about the concept of ultralight hiking previously, and the focus there, depending on how you want to view this, but the industry focus is getting your pack weight below around about 20 pounds in weight, which is 9 kilos, give or take. So that's a very lightweight sort of pack. Now, Jill's not too far away from that. I can do that on shorter hikes, but when I've got a hike of 8 to 10 days long and I'm carrying food for that distance, not going to happen. Now, again, it's what are you determined to be pack weight? Ultralight tends to determine things without perishables. So it doesn't include food, it doesn't include water, it doesn't include stove gas. They're classed as perishables. It's the things you have to carry regardless. Having said that, they're carrying 9 kilos and then adding another 6 or 7 kilos of food and another 3 kilos of water and stove gas. It's a pretty arbitrary sort of figure when you don't consider the entire weight of the pack itself.
Mm-hmm, that's right.
So what we're focusing on today is more about the total weight and how you can what you should be carrying and how you can best minimize it without the requirement to try and get to a particular arbitrary figure, which is what our ultralight hiking is aimed at. With the heavier weight packs, just to finish off on that side of things, the packs that weigh 2.5 kilos tend to have a lot more padding. They tend to be a bit bulkier, still carrying that same sort of capacity we were talking about, but they'll do it quite comfortably. So they might be able to carry 20 to 25 kilos, whereas a very lightweight pack, my two packs, they'll cope with over 18.5 kilos, but you find there's not as much padding under the shoulders. It starts to dig in a bit and the comfort tends to disappear. So it's a trade-off. Do you want to carry or have such a lightweight pack that it's uncomfortable, or do you want to compromise a bit and get a slightly heavier weight pack, maybe only 200 or 300 or 400 grams, that has extra padding in the shoulders and is going to be more comfortable? The other concept is, and this is one that I came across a few years ago, and it's a saying of comfort on trail versus comfort in camp. And these things tend to be opposite ends of the extreme. If you want to be comfortable on trail, you want to carry as little weight as you possibly can. So you try and strip out anything spare that you don't really need, anything that you can get away without. Just means when you're walking, you're almost not thinking about the weight of your pack. It's so light, and you can move pretty quickly, because the lighter your pack, the faster you can move. Comfort in camp's the opposite end of the extreme, and this might mean carrying a pillow, and I mean a real pillow, carrying a book. And on some of the books I read are probably about 1 kilo in weight, carrying an SLR camera, carrying additional changes of clothing, and something that I have actually seen, only once admittedly, was a portable DVD player. This is something you open up, stick a DVD in, and watch a movie. Now, these days with streaming and with everything else.
I was going to say, that's a bit dated, isn't it?
Well, I mean, this wasn't that long ago, and it was when streaming was still available. So, carrying a laptop or an iPad or something like a tablet that you can still watch a movie in, and probably has the same capacity to run for 5 or 6 hours to watch a movie or a couple of movies if you really want. So it's, these days we've got a few options. I do carry a small iPad, an iPad mini, when I'm hiking because of my blogging, but not many people I see on trail do carry iPads. Now, you can watch it on a phone, but again, if you're trying to get a decent quality picture and screen and not have this thing 6 inches in front of your face, an iPad just gives you that luxury of having something a bit easier to work with.
I guess what we're saying is you really need to appreciate what's important to you and accommodate that and factor that in. So there isn't any right or wrong to this, but, if your big heavy book is the most important thing and you're willing to carry it, then you carry it.
I do know a number of hikers, and this is probably sacrilege, that'll carry a big heavy book and they will tear bits of it off as they finish and throw it away.
Tear pages out that they've read. Oh, no. Yeah, I know.
So, if you've got a book that's on its last legs and needs to be replaced because you've read it so much, that may not be a bad option.
You could, you can get ebooks, people. Just saying.
Yeah, and then that's true. So you can get away with carrying a small Kindle, or again, carrying an iPad.
Or your phone.
Or your phone. But I must admit, I'm still a bit old-fashioned in this respect. I do like reading paper books, and I don't like reading off a small phone screen. I just find it really irritating.
Okay, well, let me just say there's a big difference reading a big heavy book in a tiny, tiny tent versus sitting in a comfy chair with a fire and your big heavy book. I mean, really, it depends on the experience that you're trying to go for here.
It does. Now, clothing is another thing to consider, particularly when hikers are newer. You smell when you hike. It just happens. You're exerting yourself. You're sweating. You don't have a chance to have a proper shower or a bath. So, the only way you can get around that is to have a change of new clothing. But I found when I was doing the Bibbulmun Track in 2018, I washed my clothes. They smelt lovely. Half an hour later, I stank. So just because it was a warm day.
Yeah, I've been meaning to say something about that, Tim.
So, I think on the basis that everybody smells when you're hiking, don't carry 3 or 4 sets of replacement clothing just so you can smell lovely every day. It means you've got to wash things every day. And as I said, within half an hour, you're going to smell anyway.
Yeah,
so.
You can smell lovely for a very small part of the day.
Now, the other one is seasonal weather. This is talking about whether you're hiking in snow conditions as opposed to hiking in fairly warm, humid sort of climate. If you're hiking in snow conditions, your sleeping bag, your clothing is going to be heavier. You'll have a heavier weight sleeping bag to keep you warm at nighttime. You'll have heavier clothing, and that means your pack is going to weigh more. Now, it might not be hugely more, but the difference between a summer weight sleeping bag and a heavy-duty winter weight sleeping bag, even in the best quality ones, could be 1 kilo to 1.5 kilos. So why bother carrying a sleeping bag that's going to keep you toasty warm down to minus 10 degrees Celsius when the nighttime temperature is 8 degrees? Now, some people do like being toasty and warm, but that's getting extreme.
That's pretty toasty.
And you're going to be sweating and you're carrying this thing for no particular reason.
You're making it sound really attractive now.
Still in the seasonal weather side of things is rain gear. Now, Bibbulmun Track, it was a 35-day trip and I had rain on 27 days out of 35. Now, that varied. It varied from 15, 20 minutes in the morning before I got up. That's fine. It also went to the extreme where I had 100 mils of rain in 100-kilometre-an-hour winds for a couple of hours. And, you do not want to be without wet weather gear in those sort of conditions.
And you weren't actually walking then, though, were you? You were hiding.
No, I was walking.
In 100-kilometre winds?
Yeah, and I almost got blown over. Thankfully, it was along a walkway, so I was able to hold onto the railing. But if I wasn't holding on the railing, I would have been blown over. So, yeah, it was like not much choice. Now, that's extreme conditions. But even so, if it's raining steadily throughout the day, the last thing you want to do is get soggy and wet. Now, raining in warm conditions, not a problem. Raining in cool conditions, definitely not something you want to go through and do. So cutting out things like your rain gear, getting rid of extra clothing that is going to potentially keep you warm at nighttime because the conditions are going to be mild, warm, and you're guaranteed of those sort of conditions, as opposed to you doing a multi-week hike. And I'll give you an example here, Larapinta Trail, which Jill and I have done. We had on the same day 0 degrees Celsius to 30 degrees was the temperature range. So first thing in the morning, it was fairly cold. We were wearing puffy jackets. Mm-hmm. By the end of the day, we'd stripped everything off that we could, and it was hot. Yeah. And that's not even as extreme as it gets.
That's kind of normal, though, I think, in
desert environments.
That's right.
2 weeks earlier, they had -4 degrees. So again, you're getting that 30 degrees during the hot days, and -4. That's a big variation, and you've got to have the gear to cater for that. So we do layer our clothing. I work on a 4-layering system, which I think Jill does as well. And strangely enough,
it's 5 or 6 sometimes.
My first top is a lightweight long sleeve top. My second layer is a long sleeve heavyweight top. Then I go to a synthetic warm jacket, and then my rain jacket over the top of that. And strangely enough, layer number 2, which is my heavyweight long sleeve top, is the last one I actually put on. If I need to, rain jackets will actually help keep you warm. You don't want to be in a situation where you're sweating because that's just going to make you get cold, and it's also going to wet your clothing. But for me, as I said, it's that second layer is my last one on, which is probably strange for what a lot of people do. It's really rare that I will ever wear 4 layers. Even in snow conditions, it's typically only 3 of those layers. So the 4th layer's more for when I'm washing everything else in town and I need to put something on.
Yeah, that's always important, isn't it?
It is.
Though I'm not sure what it would look like if you were wearing your rain gear, washing your other clothes, though. Anyway.
No, well, strangely enough, when that does happen, I'm wearing my long johns. I've got a pair of shorts on, and then my heavier weight top. So it's definitely a fashion statement. But
not.
Yeah, but yeah, it's one of these sort of things. If you know that it's going to be warm, it's going to be 7 or 8 degrees at nighttime. It's not going to be. Not going to need a down jacket at all. You can get away with that. You can get away with that second layer of top. Certainly, you can strip that additional gear out. From here, we move on to gender. Now, as a generalisation, women tend to feel the cold more than men do. And I think it's also been scientifically proven as well, but I'll say it's a generalisation just not to upset anybody.
Well, it's certainly the way it works in our house anyway. Yeah. Let's just say that.
Yeah. And as a result, Jill will always carry a heavier weight sleeping bag than I do. I'll often carry a lighter weight sleeping bag. I'll sleep in my underwear and that's it if it's really hot, whereas Jill will often have a covering layer because she feels the cold more than I do.
Let me just say, though, that when the weather does turn, you come looking for my side of the tent, let me tell you.
Oh, there we go. I'm not a problem. So women will often wear more layers than men do. In addition, if a male and a female are carrying identical capacity packs, so same brand, same literage size, And typically the pack for Jill is going to be smaller because the back frame and the harnessing system is smaller, but it might only save 100 to 150 grams. Generally, you'll find that two packs that are the same, one female, one male, one slightly smaller on the frame size, you're not saving a huge amount of weight. And in Jill's case, she's carrying a heavier thickness sleeping bag, which does actually weigh more than mine. And if it's really cold, she'll have an additional or a slightly warmer jacket than I will too.
And my sleeping pad is warmer than yours as well, so it's slightly heavier and a little bit bigger.
A number of years ago, when we first seriously started looking at reducing our pack weight, over a period of about a year, we reduced our pack weight by around about 32% because we were old school at that stage, carrying heavy gear in every case. But by reducing our pack weight by 32%, it ended up that as a percentage of body weight, even though Jill doesn't carry as much weight as I do, but as a percentage of body weight, that makes a difference. It's one thing saying Jill carries 12.5 kilos and I might be carrying 14.5, 15.5 kilos, depending on the length of the hike. But because I weigh more than she does, the percentage as a body weight is very different. Now, this discrepancy in pack weight was mainly to be attributed to individual cold tolerances. Really, with this sort of situation, we talked about gears earlier on, and the whole option of changing gear and lightening your pack, as I mentioned, can be done by reducing a bit here and a bit there. So our tent, our two-person tent, weighs around about 1 kilo, but you can get two-person tents that weigh 2.5, 3.5, 4.5 kilos. So again, now the heavier weight tents are much cheaper, but do you want to carry the extra weight? The pack we've already mentioned, sleeping bags. Typically we use sleeping bags that are really high end. They're not cheap, but they're using 850, 900 fill down, which means you're getting a lighter weight, more compact sleeping bag. So it takes up less weight in the pack and it takes up less bulk in the pack as well. And if you transfer that to pretty much everything across the line and go for as lighter weight options as you can, that will certainly help reduce the pack weight. But it costs, and it costs financially. Now, I wouldn't recommend that necessarily throwing something out, but next time something dies of old age and you need to replace it, look at what you can replace it with, see whether it's within budget and go for the lightest weight gear that you possibly can.
I think the other way to think about it is what are the heaviest and bulkiest items in your pack and what's your appetite for going smaller and lighter. So you don't have to have everything that's smaller and lighter, but start with those big items and just make a decision about it.
And those big items which Jill talked about, well, they're classed as the big three. So your pack, your tent, and your sleeping bag.
That's right.
Now, strangely enough, when I go solo hiking, I carry a two-person tent. I like having my pack inside the tent.
And why then do we have to squeeze into a two-person tent?
Well, if you want to carry a three-person tent, we can do that. But I mean, from my perspective, the difference between exactly the same tent in a one-person versus a two-person capacity is probably 100 to 150 grams in most cases. Yes, that's weight you can save. But in that instance there, I appreciate having the extra weight. It means my pack can live inside the tent with me. It becomes animal-proof. And it means that if I want something, I don't have to undo the zipper. I go into my pack, which is sitting just outside the tent, and closing everything back up again. There are ways to reduce the weight of your pack, but apart from cost, look at what the inconvenience or the convenience of making a change is going to be. From here, we move on to food and water. Now, water is probably one of those big ones that I use a 3-litre water bladder in my pack. I don't have to fill it up. I can put 1 litre in there if it's only a short hike. But typically, from my perspective, if it's cool, and by cool I mean 15 to 18 degrees, I'll use 1 litre of water every 10 kilometres. If it's summertime and the temperature's above 25 degrees, I'm using 1 litre every 1 hour. So it's not. I've done hikes that I've been in days that have got to 36, 37 degrees, and I've used 8 litres of water over the day, then having breakfast and having something to drink at dinner as well. So, if it is that hot, you need to carry that amount of water. Now, the assumption is that you can find water on the trail. Not always the case. So if you're only going to go for a very small amount of water, it's because you know that water is guaranteed and you can find it quite easily as you move on, and you can top up the water as you go.
And I think, water for me is the one thing you don't want to mess around with. Always want to finish a hike, whether it's, multi-day, multi-week or one day, always finish a hike with water in your pack.
Keep in mind what the water's like. If you can be guaranteed it, there's water there. If there's any doubt about water availability, you're best off carrying more. But certainly dropping water, it's 1 kilo is 1 litre. So if you drop even a litre out of 3 litres makes a difference, or 2 litres out of 3 makes a difference, and can make a big impact. The other one I mentioned was food. Now, food for me is probably the biggest individual variation. Typically, I will carry anything up to 8 days worth of food at a time on extended hikes in remote areas. And I work on roughly 612 grams, which is 1.35 pounds, dry weight of food. And that will provide me with around about 2,900 calories in what I'm carrying. Now, it's worth noting that on my biggest days, so these are days where I'm doing 35, 40, 44 kilometres, I have burnt anything up to 8,000 calories. So 2,900 calories is quite a large deficit. And when you're doing that day in, day out, it's not surprising on my long distance hikes, I factor in losing 3 to 3.5 kilos of weight per week. Now, that's not a bad thing at the moment. I'm carrying more weight than I should be. In our upcoming hike, we've got in around about 6 weeks' time, losing what amounts to, on a 2-week hike, losing 6 to 7 kilos. That's a good thing. It's a good weight loss program. But yeah, certainly doing it for 4 or 5 weeks, there is a limit there. It's just impossible to carry. I cannot physically carry 8,000 calories worth of food, even with macadamias. I think I worked out with macadamias, it's just a bit over a kilo of macadamias to replace that. And
that's a lot.
There's only so many macadamias you can eat. My comment here would also be, I can't stress enough, do not carry food that you do not enjoy. You will not eat it. You'll eat it if you're desperate, but life's too short to eat bad food. So make sure it works for you on a hike. Make sure you like it. Don't just carry it because someone's recommended it. From here, we look at how you weigh your pack. Now, there's a couple of options to work with. The easy option, and I think most, but not all households in Australia have a set of bathroom scales. So you can get onto the bathroom scale without your pack, weigh yourself, then put your pack on, stand back on there again, and that'll give you a good indication. Even if it's the dial ones, not the digital ones, you can still get a reasonable indication of what the weight of your pack is. If you are a gram winnie, someone who counts grams, then having a set of electronic scales is the way to go. I've got, in our house at the moment, I've got 2, 4, 5 sets of scales. Now, I've got 2 electronic kitchen scales, and in all honesty, that's where a lot of my weighing's done. So these things aren't particularly physically big, but I'll get a large bowl, I'll zero the bowl out and put a jacket or a pair of shoes or something in there and then weigh individual items. It works for everything on the kitchen scales except for things like packs and tents that tend to be a bit bulky. The other thing that was worthwhile having is a set of luggage scales. Now, you can buy luggage scales reasonably cheaply from Amazon and places like that. And I own 2 sets of luggage scales. We do, or at least we did do a lot of overseas travel. And when you're trying to work to a maximum baggage allowance, you needed to know what things were rather than getting to the airport and finding out you're paying an exorbitant amount of money for each kilo you've got over your weight. It's worthwhile if you are flying somewhere in particular to go to a hike, and even if you're not, if you're going on a hike, being able to say, well, okay, here's my packed pack. This is how much I think it weighs, and if you put it on and all of a sudden it's 3 kilos heavier, look at what you're carrying, and that if anything just forces you to think about what you're carrying and how you can potentially save weight.
Yeah, and in our preparation for a hike is always around the final weight of the pack. And so we'll weigh and reweigh and make a judgment and put this in and take that out and make sure that, we're reasonably within the range that we want to be.
And getting back to the food, that's probably a good indication. The amount of food I carry is based on a number of years of use. So again, I refer back to the Bibbulmun again. The food I didn't eat between food drops, I posted back home and then weighed it at the end. And that way it allowed me to work out exactly what I did and didn't eat. And it made me think about why I wasn't eating it as well.
This makes you look very obsessive, Tim.
It does. It does. But, going through and working out down to the very fine detail what it is you're carrying, it can make a big difference over a period of years. And as I said, from when I first started the process, we managed to lose 32% of what we were carrying. And that makes a big difference to the comfort you're going to enjoy on the hike. The third set of scales we own, or third type of scales we own, is something called a digital mini scale. The answer to me having these is just because these start measuring at 0.03 of a gram in 0.01 of a gram increments. They're tiny. The actual scales are not much bigger than a phone. In fact, they're probably about the same size as a standard phone, just a bit thicker. And these are fairly handy for measuring things that are really light. Now, kitchen scales or luggage scales, they measure in 1 gram increments. But, when you're trying to work out the fine detail, you'll get to a point with your pack weight that you can't really get down any further, and it does become a matter of grams rather than 10 or 20 or 100 or 200 grams you're trying to cut off. It's easy to reduce pack weight to start with, but you get to a point where it becomes really difficult. And, ultralight hikers will often cut their toothbrushes in half just to save the weight of the handle of the toothbrush.
Yeah, I think that's the thing to remember, though. If you're going to take advantage of a set of scales with that level of fine measurement, you're really out there. You're really starting to get to the very extreme end of all of the stuff that we're talking about.
And I suppose in that respect, then, as I said, a set of luggage scales, $15, $20, I think, in most cases. If that's all you get, that's a good way to go, because it means you can actually zip your pack up, put all your water and your food in there, and you hang it. There's a hook on it. You just pick up the hook through one of the loops on your pack, and you can actually get your entire pack weight quite easily. Otherwise, put it on, stand on a set of bathroom scales. And
don't forget to put your hiking poles in there too, because they weigh. You might not be using them all the time, and when you're not using them, guess what? You're carrying them.
Last but not least, reassess. Just because you did a trip last year doesn't mean what you're carrying is the stuff you need to carry for this upcoming trip. I have a spreadsheet with everything I own and all the weights associated with it. It's a checklist for me to make sure I've got everything, and then I can sit down and say, right, I left this behind, or I bought something extra with me, and as a result, this is what I'm carrying weight-wise. I expect my pack to be this weight, and sure enough, when you actually weigh your pack, it'll be very close in that region. There might be some slight difference one way or the other, but you're not going to expect a 10 or a 20% difference. So you can you can estimate what your pack's going to weigh without having to pack it if you really don't want to go to that extent. And particularly if you're not changing gear on a regular basis, you're working with the same pack, the same tent, you're carrying exactly the same food as you did, there shouldn't be much difference, much variation. But always go through and reassess your weight. Don't just work on what happened last time. So in conclusion, the answer to the question, how much should your pack weigh, there really is no definitive response. What I would say is that unless you have very specific needs, keep your pack weight below 20% of your body weight as a starting point, and look at ways to minimize what you carry so you carry as little weight as possible.
But also carry what you want and what you need.
That's very true, and it really comes down to hike your own hike. Just because your partner or your friend has got a pack that's 3 kilos lighter than yours, they may not be carrying things, so they're sitting there freezing because they've got a really lightweight sleeping bag.
They might want to borrow your stuff.
Yeah. So, this Jill's sleeping bag, I can fit into it in a pinch. It'd be way too warm for me, but, worst case is, it's there.
No, it's not there.
So I come looking for you when it's really cold. But yeah, it's the sort of thing that it's no good cutting weight for the sake of it. Carry what you need to carry what you want to carry, and then trying to do that, try and carry as little weight as you possibly can. That's all for this week's episode, brought to you by Australian Hiker. We hope this has been informative and will help you to minimise your pack weight. That's all for me. Bye for now.
And bye from me.
$60, 70% more than she does, the percentage as a body weight is very different.
Sorry, you don't weigh 60 to 70% more. It's 30 to 40%, isn't it?
I was being polite.